Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Slant. Slant. All right, Paul, let's go.
This is our membership watch party of the movie Sideways from 2008 by writer-director Kenneth Castillo.
My Christian name is George Washington Rodriguez. I've always been known as Sideways.
Joining us as well is writer, director, producer Kamran Pasha, editor, producer, extraordinaire, YouTuber Robert Meyer Burnett, the great Mexican Iron Man, and the fine people of our community. So thank you, man. Congratulations, Kenneth.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching it with me. It was great. It was an interesting experience.
Kamran, what did you think about the film? And you called a lot of plot twists before they happened.
Yeah.
Me having seen it already was fun because I knew what was coming and I watched you call it. But what did you think?
Well, I mean, the reason I was able to call the plot twist is because it's a well-structured movie and it's very archetypal, right? It touches people on a very deep level. And, you were saying earlier that you were proud of the dialogue. You should be proud of the dialogue. There's some really wonderful moments here. The thing is, the dialogue and all the performances are very real. It's something I said in the comments. It's a kind of normal interaction. And it also breaks all the nonsensical stereotypes that we in Hollywood have when we're trying to present a Latino family, and it ends up being this let's do our Saturday morning cartoon, version of that, and the more rather than real human beings, who make jokes and get pissed off and they fight and they forgive each other. And that's the dynamic that was so wonderful in the script. Those are the moments that made this script so rich. And I wrote earlier on, very early on, I wrote in the chat, this is a great screenplay. And I said that, and I remain of that opinion, and even strongly so, I haven't watched all of it, because there were surprises in it, and there were some wonderful moments. And at the very, for example, I said at the end, he should have shot those guys, but that's not who he is. He
Right.
could have taken those guys out because he's got the gun and they're threatening to kill his nephew, right? But he's not that. He's not a killer. He's not that guy, right? And a poor screenwriter would have taken it to that place for shock value, right? And you kept it real throughout, even, and that's what I really appreciated. That this was a really special couple hours of my life, and I appreciate you being here to share this with us.
Oh wow, man, that's high praise. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Those are great. That's some great feedback.
Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert?
Well, I'm curious, how long from the time that the script was written to, I guess what the timeline of getting the movie produced was. How long was it all in from the time you had a script to development, to get the movie financed, and actually to get the movie made?
It was a period of over from April to July of 2008.
Wow.
And it was released, I believe, the following February of 2009.
That's pretty great, though.
Yeah, it was. What had happened originally was I had this short film series called The Misadventures of Cholo Chaplin, which was like a Day of the Dead reenactment of Charlie Chaplin's shorts, but with Chicano themes to it.
Wow.
And I packaged it like a DVD. So after I got rejected by every local film festival, including Latino film festivals, I decided to go to those same festivals and just pass my DVD out. So I did that, and it got in the hands of a distributor and he loved the cover, and he's like, what is this? I got to know what this is. And I was explaining it to him. He's, oh, are you screening here at the festival? I said, no, they rejected it. And he's like, you have it packaged. Is this at Walmart? Is this at Blockbuster? I said, no, I'm selling it through my website. I was self-distributing, before that term was even around.
Sure.
And he said, well, how long is it? And I said, well, they're silent shorts. It's 6 5-minute shorts. He's like, well, that's not enough, for a feature. I'm looking for features. And I said, well, I'm writing a feature right now. And he says, well, is it in the urban genre? And I said, yeah, that's all my work. And he says, well, here's my card. He's like, you look me up. He's like, we are a distributor called Plus Entertainment, and we're looking to get into production. If we like your skit, maybe we'll produce it. So I said, okay. So I told him, I said, well, it's not ready yet. It'll be ready in about 3 weeks. I'm still working on it. I hadn't even started it yet.
Good man, though. This is exactly how it works.
Oh,
yeah, I need 3 weeks, man.
Absolutely. I didn't even have final draft at the time to write it on. I was bartending at the time. I picked up an extra shift so I could afford to get final draft. So I wanted the script I submitted to be as professional as possible. And so it took me really about 5 weeks, but they were asking for the script. And when I'd given them a log line about this wannabe gangster, he wasn't a gangster, but he was a wannabe gangster. Those stories never get told. And about kids in the neighborhood growing up and to be, playing baseball in the street, and then now he's your enemy for some reason.
Right.
So they really liked that concept. So they came back to me and said, look, we have money for 3 films we're going to produce at $50,000 a piece. Yours is the second one. We're going to shoot it in the fall. And I said, great. And so then what happened was the other 2 filmmakers that they had reached out to were kind of their own worst enemies because they were very egotistical. They didn't like the notes they were being given. And I was loving the notes because I was like, this guy took the time to read my 90-page script and gave me some very detailed notes on how to make it better and put more action in it. They loved the characters, loved the dialogue. And he said, how would you feel if we pushed up production to July? And I said, we're going to make yours the first film and we'll do the second one and the third one later. And I said, okay. I go, but just so you know, this is one of 3 that I have written. They're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm doing this thing called the Drive-By Chronicles. It's a trilogy of urban films that start with a drive-by. And unlike the news that covers the drive-by, I'm going to cover, the movies are going to be about what happens after the drive-by to these families. And I gave them I had about 10 pages written of my next one, which was called Ghost Town, and a log line for my third one. And we had a meeting and they read all that and they said, you know what, we're going to go forward with all 3 films. We're not going to do business with the other 2. And so I was pretty excited.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because I had produced a film before Sideways of my own. It was about a $25,000 film. Again, it was based on a series of one-acts that I did. I made into a feature. I directed it and produced it on an XL1. Those of us of my age know what an XL1 is.
Yeah.
But nobody was doing that at that time. At least no Latinos I knew were doing that. But it didn't go anywhere, do anything. But that was my film school. So when this opportunity came along, I was like, I didn't have to do everything. And so when he told me we had a production that they were giving me basically 11 days to shoot this feature. So that meant that I had to do 13 pages a day.
Yep.
So I told them, I can do that, but you're going to have to let me cast who I want to cast, even if you don't know who they are. And I had a lot of people in theater. I was an actor for a little while. I knew I had to get actors that could get it really quickly. And I knew the chemistry had to be there right away. So I had to develop my own audition process because I did not use casting directors. My experience as an actor with casting directors was very negative. So I wasn't going to put my first cast in the hands of a casting director.
So, I mean, this is a great story because for those of you who are out there, they're wannabe filmmakers, it doesn't usually happen like this. and you played it perfectly.
Right.
And I'm curious. So once you got on set, I mean, what was that like? And could you talk a little bit about the prep that you went through? Did you rehearse with the actors at all, and how did you work with your director of photography?
My background is theater, so I bring that discipline in the audition room, and then I also bring it in rehearsals. So we would rehearse about 2 weeks prior to, and talk character. We would block scenes, and the locations. In terms of prep, the other thing was I was trying to get people that were loyal to me and not necessarily to the producers, so that I could be protected. So my assistant director was actually a stage manager for plays that I produced, but she worked in commercials. So she came on as my assistant director and did a day of days and call sheets and busted her ass for me, and really kept things organized. And then all the locations were all friends and family. They were all friends and family that came and allowed me that flexibility to shoot in their homes. So I brought production costs down that way.
Wow.
So the producers were trusting me, and then they put kind of a supervising producer on set who came in very hard with me at the very beginning, but then I turned her around in terms of how I work, how efficiently and how fast I work. So by the time we got to set, I mean, things were, I was pretty blocked out already, and I had known the locations very, very good, and the script I had in my brain, backwards and forwards. So I did not have a shot list at all. And I only did about 2 days of pickups. There was maybe 1 or 2 scenes that we didn't shoot because they were going to require, like there's a scene where we see what a marksman Vanderwide is. He takes sideways to go shooting. And there's a scene where the two of them are kind of talking, and Sideways is like, wow, you shoot for fun? Like, I don't understand this concept of shooting for fun. Where I'm from, we shoot for survival. And so there's like little scenes like that I missed, and had I had a bigger budget, I could have pulled off. But the heart never got lost. There was another film I did later that I had to make so many compromises. The heart just got lost. The trailer's great for it, but the movie did not deliver the way that I needed it to. And that was all my fault. So.
Well, I mean, this is amazing. So you shot for 11 days and there was a few days of pickups?
Yeah. Oh, and my DP was from Mexico City. That was the guy that they brought in. They wanted me to work with an experienced DP that had worked with them before, but me and him hit it off right away. And his crew was all from Mexico. And, a Mexican crew against an industry crew in Los Angeles, there's just no comparison, man. It's what three of them could do. I had I call it a Hollywood crew on one of my films, and it just was, there's just a lot of politics involved, and I'm getting asked, well, don't go over because we get a meal of this and this, that, and the other, and I'm like, I've shot with Mexican crew where they're just like, boom, 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 man, and they're working in incredible sync with the director of photography. And my 3 of my other films, my director of photography was someone that I had chosen, Mike Teston, who had never been to Mexico. I shot 3 films there with him, and that was an all Spanish speaking crew, and they just loved and respected him. And he was just like, they're incredible in terms of almost, because in Mexico they make movies 360 days a year. These guys are hardcore. But anyway, I'm admitting Alvaro's in. So that was how I had a really good relationship with them. And just as a leader, I'm not a very ego-driven director. I try to motivate people. I try to, I'm just not that way. I'm not a yeller. I'm a passionate guy on set, but I'm not somebody, I know what I want and I know how to communicate. I have a wife and 2 kids, so I know how to communicate.
Well, it's amazing what you pulled off.
Really fast, Robert, and the rest. The lead actor has joined us. Alvaro, Orlando, fantastic job, sir. This is the 2nd movie I've now seen you in. I'm such a fan of your work, man. You are a real unique leading man. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What was it like for you getting this part? And I'm curious, like, obviously being front and center, there's a lot going on. Was having a rehearsal time or getting your head, wrapping your head around the script? Did it take you a long time to get yourself in the mindset of the character?
So I did a reality show on VH1 called Pickup Artist, and that's how I got the audition with the producer. His name is Gonzalo. He was a fan of the reality show, but Kenneth, Mr. Kenneth Castillo, was like, "You ain't bringing no reality star up in my film." So I had to work for it a little bit more, and basically I got the audition and I worked on it, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And when I got to the audition, I was the first one there. I was like half an hour earlier, just early, and I had the script all laid out in the waiting room with notes all over it. And then just Kenny walks in slow motion, just kind of looks at me up and down. "Hey, what's up?" And then keeps walking. So I definitely had to earn this role. Once I got it, I was really grateful that because I wasn't Mexican, that Kenny can see beyond that. He was, that I captured the essence of the character. And then one of the I don't know, kind of like the feedback that we got from one of our friends. Me and Kenny know a lot of people in common. And when they saw Sideways, they were like, "Hey, you were supposed to play Cholo, bro. Like you came out kind of goofy. You came out kind of like you kept falling over stuff, and you had moments where it's kind of like a comedy. Like Cholos are not like that." And then I called Kenny and I was like, "Bro, you're gonna ruin my career. I don't know what happened. I'm supposed to be a Cholo." And I was like, "Man, Kenny, whatever, dude." And then the feedback that we ended up getting from Sideways, a lot of it was that Sideways was human. He was, just a little offbeat and quirky.
Yeah.
What I thought that was a bad thing was a lot of the feedback we got was what they liked, the quirkiness.
Yeah, see, actors always want to be the coolest dudes in the room, and sometimes you brought a humanity to it that you didn't even know you were doing.
Well, he must have had some insight, because some of the funniest guys I knew growing up, my extended family
Absolutely.
were funny ass Cholo cousins.
Yeah. The dialogue between all the Cholos, especially, I was laughing still to this day, I mean, Cholos, there is a humor there. With what Alvaro, I remember when Alvaro called me that, and he was panicked, and he watched it with a bunch of his acting buddies, and so I was like, none of these guys can every young actor thinks they can hold a movie. I go, but
right.
You're the lead in the film. Of course they're not going to give you props, man. You're their competition. I go, you don't watch it with them. You watch it with everyday Joes, man. You watch it with not even your family. But
that's like Mean Girls. Does my makeup look good?
Exactly.
That's the wrong audience.
I've had the experiences where when I've done screenings, I always know the hater in the room, because they'll point out some flaw in the film that nobody else noticed. There was a pop in the audio, and did you realize that? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And yeah, there's a pop in the audio. But I always revert back to Charlie Chaplin, who never kept continuity, because he said, if they're paying attention to that, then I've already lost the audience.
Open this up.
They're not the same characters, so that they're all their own individual. But they all have the same themes. It's always about brothers, relationships, redemption. It's always about kind of getting out, not just out of the neighborhood, but just trying for something better than what you have. All of them have a bittersweet ending. The way I see it is that if I give the audience something, then I have to take something away from them in the endings of my films. So those are pretty consistent themes throughout, especially the trilogy. Yeah, I thought about connecting them, but when you're doing low budget, I'm like, if I connect them and I can't get the same actors to play the same roles, that's going to be an issue. I wasn't in a lot of the actors that I was getting, the quality of actors that I got was based mostly not on the amount of money I could pay them, but on the script, on the strength of the script, and them going, I got to do this, and I got to play, because they're not being given these opportunities in Hollywood, particularly at that time. Now I would say it's a lot better for Latino actors, but back then I had a good pool of actors that I could pull from, and that brought it. They're not. It could be easily, when you're that low budget, be an ABC after school special, which was something that I used to watch as a kid growing up. And that's not what I was trying to do with these. So I was trying to make them as cinematic and and have as much depth as I could with the budgets and time that I was given. But just to go back to what Alvaro said about his audition, yeah, it was, he did not have a lot of things going for him. And I purposely made his audition at 9 o'clock in the morning and told the producer, if he's a minute late, I'm not going to consider him. And of course, he was a half hour early before I even got there. So the producer, yeah, and then he comes and kills the audition. And I just remember looking at the producer, and he's looking at me like, yeah, this is going to be our guy. And I'm like, he wanted him because of his numbers and his popularity. But after I put Alvaro through the ringer through when we did the audition process, which was a 4-hour callback with mixing and matching of actors, yeah, it was pretty clear to me that he was a crafted actor, and I knew I knew the audience would like him, and that's what I needed them to do as well. And he had, of course, he had his own charisma as well. Yeah, definitely. I would say that I hide behind my characters. There's definitely, particularly growing up, I grew up in Wilmington, which is a harbor area in Los Angeles, Port of Los Angeles, but I went to an all-white private school in Torrance, so I didn't fit in anywhere. That's really the basis of where this character came into, and not fitting in and trying to fit in and trying to do right, but not basically succeeding in either world, and kind of being destroyed by the collision of those two worlds. Because my experience with Los Angeles, and I have other themes, is that we're very, we're kind of promoted as a melting pot, but we're actually a very segregated city. So I definitely tapped on those themes. A lot of the characters are compilations of people that I grew up with and knew, and stories that I've heard, stories that I've witnessed. Ghost Town in particular, which is the second film, is probably my most personal film. And then Confession of a Gangster, which was initially called Nikki and Jackie. Same thing, in particular the Mariposa character that Alvaro plays, the transgender character that Alvaro plays in that film, is based specifically off of someone from my childhood.
I think I attached more to no matter how much he tried to do things right, he somehow always ended up fucking up. And I just, I don't know, I think I can relate to that, guys, a lot. Like that one line where I was with my brother and I was like, I'm a fuck up. That line, I don't think, Kenny, right? I don't think that line, I'm a fuck up, was in the script. But for me, that line informed the whole, for me, like getting under that character, is that no matter how hard he was trying, that he just keeps messing up. And I think I just, I went from there, and then just kind of following Kenny's direction and not overthinking anything. And we had a lot of rehearsal and had a lot of questions for him. He answered. So I think it was that was my process. Jim Carrey said that the best acting is when you can do a scene and someone's throwing a tennis ball at your head while you continue to do the scene. So I guess what you're saying is like super focused. And I think with the budget that we had and shooting that many pages a day, Murphy's Law came in a lot, which is whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I don't know if Kenny told you guys the story, but I got real cops pointed a real gun to my head in Boyle Heights. And so a lot of things happened to me in the process. I chipped a tooth in the middle of shooting, and I had a pounding migraine because like the nerve was open. I had to get like a root canal, and my girl at the time just put like gaffer tape or something, or like glue to chip it. So for me, it was, I think it was just years and years. It was my first lead in the film, but I've moved to New York, and all I did for 2 years was take acting class 30 hours a week. And so I can always rely on my craft no matter what. And then having Kenny there obviously was for just he wrote this so well that I felt like I didn't need to do much. I just needed to stick to the script and just get out of my own way. But definitely was very challenging. The scene at the end where I get on my knees to Little Sideways and I tell him like, don't be like me or whatever. Literally, guys, that was one take and we moved on. That was one take.
Wow.
And so that was kind of the feel of it. It was just, we don't have time for actors to quote unquote start preparing and doing all this method acting. It's just like, no, bro, roll in the camera and you're going to bring it and we're moving on. Let's go.
I think it has a lot to do with just, there wasn't a big blooper reel for this. We didn't have one at all. Kurt Caceres, who plays Alvaro's brother, one day he kept doing some things because it was his last day on set. So he would come out with the teddy bear, he would do things. But there just was no blooper because we were just so focused. And as long as everyone came with the script, memorized for their scenes, I think I communicated well. It was a whirlwind, but I think I communicated well. And also just building the confidence of the actor, because sometimes, especially with Alvaro, he didn't feel like he had it. And I'm like, we don't move on if we have it. The luxury of playing, we don't have. But once we have it, we move on. Would I've liked to have done 5-10 takes so we can explore? Absolutely. But if I had it, then we moved on. If we didn't, though, then we would continue to try to find it. But I had, very good actors, as you guys see. And so, yeah, and in terms of the police, the LAPD, that was a rough day. That day for night that I was talking about, or night for day, or day for night, I always confuse them. But where he comes in after the drive-by and they're inside the house yelling at him, that was a tough day because he was coming in off of the street. We had these giant Kino lights lighting the house for day. It was probably our last day in that neighborhood. The neighborhood was done with us. And I thought we did a good job of not intruding on the neighborhood because I know when they've shot movies there before, it's real easy for the neighborhood to turn on you. And they were starting to. So there was about 30 people outside and it drew a crowd, and someone had called the cops saying they saw someone with a gun run into a house, which was Alvaro with a 9mm prop gun. And it was so obvious we were making a film, and yet the guy felt the need to take his gun out. I handcuffed Alvaro, put him against the cop car. My second AD runs in. I yell action. There's no Alvaro running through the front door. I yell action again, no Alvaro. My second ND comes through. He's all, the cops are outside. They have Alvaro against the car. He's handcuffed. They have a gun on him. It was just so obvious we were making a movie.
You got swatted.
Oh yeah, big time.
Somebody swatted you.
And I ran out there and said, what are you guys doing? They're like, do you guys have a permit? I said, of course. And the irony of the whole thing, it was the only day where we were in complete compliance of our permit.
Well, that saved Alvaro's butt, I bet.
Yeah, wow. I didn't think he was going to come back. I've had a gun pulled on me twice growing up, and it's not fun. Once was by the police. So I kind of hugged him, embraced him, and he gave me one of those hugs, like his hands were down, like he wasn't gonna, and I was hugging him. And then he just looked at me and walked away. It killed the energy of the day. I still had to get at least two more setups, and we just killed the day. And I didn't know how I was gonna get them. And luckily my producers were like, don't worry, we'll get that again. We'll finish, don't worry. But yeah, wow. This day is done. And wow. The next day he showed up fresh and ready to go. But yeah, I didn't know if he was going to come back to set after that.
Kenneth is a caliber filmmaker. I also encourage everyone to check out his interview on Film Courage. Wow, that's what really got me hooked.
When they asked to interview me, I think I'm one of the only Latino filmmakers they've talked to. But yeah, it was a 4-hour interview that we did, and they used a lot of that. So it was a great experience. I do have a book coming out that I've talked about a lot of these experiences. 7 films there's a lot of wounds that I have. So, and raising a family as well. One story I was sharing earlier about the bedroom where Vander White and his wife have the altercation was actually my bedroom, my wife's bedroom, at our house, and I lost that house about 5 years after Sideways. It was one hell of a year, but I do talk about it in my book. Yeah, so it was a little bittersweet to see my old home in my movie, but yeah, no, I have a lot of those stories, and that book will be out, and I'm hoping to do an interview with Polly when that comes out. And there are a lot of stories in there. I guess I was always a filmmaker at heart. I as a young age, like my dad showed me films like Patton and The Godfather and Apocalypse Now when I was like 7 years old.
Good man.
And I knew already what good acting was and storytelling. I would always, and for whatever reason, cared about the credits. I'm an 80s baby. I grew up with G.I. Joes and the A-Team and those types of toys and Transformers and creating scenarios, essentially storyboarding with my action figures. And then I switched schools and became really introverted and shy, and didn't go back to, I would say, art until a year after college. I thought I wanted to be an actor. So I went to an acting academy, and ironically, I had to take a directing class there, and I hated it. I said, I want to be an actor. I don't want to be a director. And he had written me, my directing teacher had written me at the end. He's like, it's really a shame that you haven't done the work, because you show the most potential of any director that I've worked with. But if you want to do acting, that's fine. And so when I started producing theater, I saw Clerks. It's a little stereotypical. I saw Clerks. I saw El Mariachi, and those films were good for what they were. But I always felt like I know better actors than these guys. I went to an acting academy. We've been doing theater, and if I can get something together and get my people in front of a camera, then why can't we have the same success? And so that's how it started. And after I did my first one, I always say you're not really a filmmaker until you do your second film, because after your first one, after the pain and money and struggle and hardship that you experience in getting your first film made, and at the end of that, your attitude is, I got to do that again, which mine was. Then there's something wrong with you, but you're also a filmmaker. You're a legitimate filmmaker now, because I've done it 7 times. And if someone called me tomorrow, I would do it again. I would, it's the getting the funds and doing all that kind of thing is the part I don't like. I've never crowdsourced or crowdfunded. Actually, I crowdfunded for one of my films. And that was only because I was doing a feature, and I had interviewed with Film Courage. It was kind of out there, and I hadn't completed it. And a person that knew me very well decided to kind of copy my concept, but in a short film way. And so I got upset, and I started promoting, asking people to help finish my film because my work was being stolen, essentially. And I raised like $6,000 in 3 days. That's all more than I needed to get it finished. And so in terms of knowing, it was a weird kind of progression where it was just kind of natural. I've always been a storyteller. I didn't know that directing was something that you did until after I got out of school. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, as a profession, I didn't know that was something that someone existed, that kind of thing existed, especially for a kid from Wilmington, which was when I decided to do the book. I didn't know. I go, look, it was 2 filmmakers that told me to write a book. And I was like, look, man, I'm not Robert Rodriguez. I don't have that kind of success. People don't know who I am. And they were the ones that convinced me, look, man, you've done 7, you're still doing it. Most people give up when they don't become Robert Rodriguez. You're still doing it. So there's value to that. So if you can, and you have incredible stories of your war stories. So that was how it came about. And, I'm real proud of it. I'm on the final draft now, and it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, that's the cover of the book. Thanks for sharing that, Polly.
Right on time.
I call it stereotypical because a lot of my films, by my own community in Hollywood, they kind of deemed them as stereotypical. And so I didn't get a lot of love and support from my own community in Hollywood, but my audience has always been there for me. So they're the ones that have checked it out on Redbox. They're the ones that reach out to Alvaro one ex-gang member actually tattooed the last few lines of the film on his back and sent it to me. He paraphrased it, but it's understandable. I will usually come in on the fourth edit. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'll sit with the editor in the fourth edit, but I get approval and I'll give notes after each edit. So like for the trilogy, my editor was in Mexico City. So he would send me links or drives of my film. On the first cut, I would give him notes. He would do a second cut, then more notes, third cut. I would have the production company I was working with gave me four tries at it, which was great. And then on the fourth try, they would fly me to Mexico City, and me and him would hammer out we would lock picture within 3 weeks of that. And I always would give music for them to edit to as well. That's something I would do a lot of. But I would stick to my scripts for the most part. Then I would rearrange. By the second or third cut, I would rearrange the film sometimes. I would rewrite the film with what we shot.
I just want to say that the journey that you shared with us, along with this incredible film, the journey of your journey as a filmmaker, I think is something that everyone, both on this panel and in whoever's watching in the audience, should really take in, because it's the journey of a true artist, someone who has come to understand it's the art that's what it's about. And you've shared with us so many wonderful tidbits of what I've seen go into great filmmaking. One of the most important things you shared with us that I think anyone who wants to be a filmmaker has to understand is the deep level of trust you have to have with the crew, right? And and with your keys, like your line producer. I've worked on a project once on a TV show where the line producer was essentially a spy for the studio. And their whole job was to, whenever we'd have a problem, instead of trying to solve the problem, their job would be to call the exec and say, they're not on schedule, right? Instead of solving the problem, right? And that's why when you said that you had, these producers who you trusted, that's how you got this thing done from what you described. The amount of pages you're shooting, the stresses you're under, it's because you have a crew you trusted. And so anyone who is watching this that wants to be a filmmaker, this man is giving you the day-to-day of how to do this, and also the deeper thing of you got to do this for the art. We never know if any of our things are going to succeed. We never know if we become Robert Rodriguez or just, we don't know. And you don't know what tomorrow holds for you, right? From the quality of this film that I've seen here, Kenneth, you've got a long and interesting career with God's grace ahead of you, man. And so, don't ever say, I'm not Robert Rodriguez. I didn't know your work now. I now know your work. I'm a working professional. R&B is a working professional. There's other, you're on my radar now. I'm like, this guy is somebody I want to work with. And so you have no idea what the journey ahead of you is. Just keep creating from the love, and it's going to bring more stuff to you. That's all I wanted to say.
I really appreciate that. All the love I've gotten from all of you from all over the world. I'm incredibly humbled by it, and it just gives me a lot of creative energy. And I'm pretty resilient, and I've been pretty energized, but I'm pretty energized by this whole experience. So I really want to thank Latino and Polly, has been amazing in making this happen. And look, there's 6 other more. Maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah. I've always told people that, especially in our movie pundit space, I've always said, I think everybody should try and make a movie at one point in their lives, only because I think trying to make a film or actually making a film is an optimistic act. It's actually to sit down and, you come up with a story, you have to create characters, and there's so many different levels to it. It's not just putting words down on paper. Then you have to figure out, okay, now I have to get a team of people to work together, to work with me. And we're basically creating something from the ether, whether it's from your imagination or someone else's imagination. And I would ask, now that you've had, quite a career, are you still as optimistic about work as you were when you first started making films and you first started getting into theater? And do you still have that same energy? Because I know for me, I do. And even though you talked about a lot of adversity, there is a lot of adversity. And I think you build up a thick skin, but you also know that, well, there's a lot of adversity in anything. And I guess I'm asking you, moving forward, are you still as optimistic about the art of filmmaking and the power of the image as you ever were?
That's a great question, and that's a very difficult question for me to answer. First of all, I like your take on saying that it's an act of optimism. In the Film Courage interview I did, I said that you had to be a little bit narcissistic to do a film because you got to assume that what you're doing is worth somebody's time, an hour and a half time. But I like your take on it better, and I think I'm gonna revert to that instead of saying narcissistic, to say that it's an act of optimism, which I believe it is.
I do too.
And I would say I'm not as optimistic with independent film because it has gotten easier to make them, but it's gotten much, much harder to get distribution for them. That being said, my 7th film that I did, I was making a film that I knew wasn't going to get distribution. And to this day, actually, I may have just gotten distribution today for it. And I finished that film 4 years ago.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And but I was making that film knowing that I had a story to tell that story, knowing that no one was going to care about this film, but I had to tell it something. I just had to do it. But it was very hard to complete that film because of my knowledge of the business kept getting in the way of the creativity. And I kept second guessing myself. Why? You know, when I'm doing my kids' laundry and I pull more money out of their pockets than I had in the bank after just paying rent, I'm asking myself, why am I doing another film, self-financing another film? That being said, the creative well has never dried up. So now my new focus has been television. But, you know, I'm still writing, and the pandemic for me, you know, I've written 2 pilots. I wrote I got hired to write a feature film for another producer that I don't have. I'm not directing. I was just as a writer. I've been writing a lot more, and I'm now starting to get that fire again where I want to do something. But, you know, I've sacrificed a lot for this pursuit. I've managed to keep my family intact. I've managed to keep my marriage intact. I don't know that I want to put myself through another trial like that, but I'm open to the opportunities, and I have a lot of work that still I can use to, how do I say, give me an opportunity, hopefully, without me having to spend my own money.
Well, that's fantastic.
I want to thank first the filmmaker, friend, Kenneth Castillo, and his time and energy to share with us. It's one thing to, you know, we could watch a movie and then, you know, we can all talk, but to have the filmmaker with us is truly unique. You're you know, I noticed how your growth. I mean, your writing's your writing, but I noticed your filmmaking growth from Sideways to Counterpunch.
Thank you.
Yeah, brother. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. The slam. The slam. All right, Paul, let's go.